Hi, everybody, all who are in the room and also all who are online. And I'm Meredith Cornett with the Forums Committee.
How many are online?
So far, we have, oh, I lost count here. Here, I think, right. We have 9 online and the room is, good morning, starting to fill in. So I am really excited today to be here talking with all of you in our last forum of 2025. We will be back again in the new year. We'll talk about that when we're wrapping up here. But I've been looking forward to this forum for almost a year. So we have with us Marty Sozansky, who I think many, if not all of you already know. I'm just getting to know Marty as a relatively new UU myself. And she is, whether you realized it or not, UUCD's, I'm going to call you our archivist. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that we have an archive at UUCD. So she's going to share about that. And I'm going to chime in with some of my own fun experiences going on a field trip together to the archives. And I'm just going to hand the mic over to you now, Marty. And let's give Marty a warm welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We are here to talk about the UUCD archives, and there is one. It occupies 6½ feet of the archive at UMD, which represents the entirety of northeastern Minnesota, and many of the items in the Historical Society archive are there also. And I want to dedicate this discussion to the late Marree Seitz, who was my friend and a mentor and got me involved in sitting in the workroom and going through boxes and boxes of scripts and sermons and all kinds of things. And we made several trips over the years to take items to the archive. Today, we want to talk about what an archive is and why it's nice to have one.
Can you move up so that you're not being haunted here?
Well,
No,
they-
right back, but
don't
don't
they-
we?
if you
We
want.
had school, don't we? So you're behind your laptop.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that Marty needs to be in front of the camera.
Oh, can you sit here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, see it.
Yeah.
I'll make so I can see Marty.
I have all kinds of dreams about all this, but we'll talk about that later.
I'm not going to look any better.
No.
You realize this. Where our actual archive is, and we get to share some highlights of what's there, and that's the fun part. And how can we continue to build our archive and its enormous usefulness to the congregation. An archive is, by definition, a collection of historical records, documents, or data preserved for long-term reference, or it is also the physical or digital place where these valuable items are kept, serving as evidence of the past for institutions, families, or individuals. The archive is located in the Kathryn A. Martin Library at the University of Minnesota, Duluth. And the history department at UMD within the last decade has started offering a course of study in public history, which represents the academic starting point for people interested in working in an archive, being archivists themselves. There seems to be a growing interest in our culture, maybe led by we baby boomers, for preserving the past of our institutions, our government, all sorts of things that we're involved in at this point in history. So it's an exciting event, I think, happening right now as we continue to build an archive. The materials in the UMD archive are located on the second floor annex of the UMD library. This is a photo that Meredith took of some of the shelving. The shelving that was put in is movable, so the library no longer has to leave all that space for us to waddle through the stacks in this kind of a setting. The archive is staffed by librarian Amy Brown, who is in charge of archives and special collections at the UMD library. There are other staff, and one nice thing is that they often have the work of able interns from the program in the history department that is involved with public history. If you can go to the archive and you file a request ahead of time, I want to see the materials about the opening of UUCD in 2008. Can you help me? And when you arrive there, you will have been supplied with materials from the archive. They are housed in these boxes and files, and you will be supplied with protective wear so that the materials can continue to be preserved. And we work with pencils and not pens, and we get so much help from the staff in the archive if we are and when we are looking for things. The archive has always been located in the UMD library. However, until the early 2000s, the archivist was employed by the St. Louis County Historical Society. That changed, and now the archivist is a library employee. And we have always been really fortunate in working with people there. Our archive is, there's always a guide published so that one could actually know what's there, even though it's just a table of contents. Our archive, which names us, continues to name us First Unitarian Church of Duluth, Minnesota. The records of the church, this is the abstract. The records of the church span a number of years of activity, but there are gaps in the records. They are organized into 4 series: administrative, I lost my place, social organizations, ministerial, and financial. So this is how they see a general overview of the kinds of things that are in our 6 1/2 feet of shelf space for the materials. At the top of the second page, there the heading called Controlled Access Headings is a little more complete list of the items contained in the archive. This guide runs 25 pages printed out, and each of the major headings, it tells you generally what is in them, what box number, and what a folder number, so that you can continue with help to find meetings. So you can see at the bottom of the second page, for example, box 1, folder 1 contains our articles of incorporation, which is 1887. So, okay, I'm going to turn this over to Meredith, who really is, because of something she did last year, is really responsible for our being here.
Thank you, Marty. And I'm gonna give a shout out to Giger, who was even like, if you kind of dig down to why we're here today, a comment that she made inspired me to approach Marty and say, I hear there's an archive. How do I get there? What do I do? So I was interested at the time. I'm gonna just eat the mic. I think we have to get it really close to our mouths, Marty. Yeah, I think the batteries are good, but it's better.
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay. So I'm also the Moose Jaw Congregational Connector, and I'm telling a story actually that involves Sally Aquit Larson. So you came in at just the right time. It was like we planned it. So I was asked, Kathy Peterson and I, if there were examples of the Unitarian Church here in Duluth being involved in providing sanctuary in the past for, in that case, it was immigrants. I know that there are current movements involving immigrant sanctuary. So anyway, we've got this nice long history, but at the time I didn't know, and I asked several people who also didn't know, and Giger said, you should call Sally. And so I did, and then Sally told me a lot of the story in the background and said, you will find all this information and more at the UUCD archive. So I was like, okay, clearly I got to get over and talk to Marty about it. And we weren't there terribly long, maybe an hour or two, looking through materials, and I just found reams. So this is just a couple of highlights that I wanted to share as part of this case study of all the cool things that are in the archive. But the first was a letter from the Reverend at the time, November 1982, Reverend Ben Borton, telling to Congressman Oberstar, saying that he really appreciated the presentation that on the El Salvador crisis, the evening of October 30th, your remarks brought into vivid focus the reign of terror that persists in that troubled region. So it was basically a thank you letter and a statement to the congressman, who wrote back and signed it, Jim. Your letter was truly an inspiration. Thank you so much for your very thoughtful comments about my presentation on El Salvador to your congregation. So I guess he spoke here, not in this building, but it was without question one of the most memorable and satisfying meetings of its kind that I have had in a long time. So we've got this rich history of social justice, as we know, but I love seeing these examples. It really brings it to life. The piece that Sally was telling me about had to do with the partnership between UUCD. So it was the Duluth Superior Interfaith Sanctuary Committee. So there are echoes of modern times in there as well. Is expected to announce today that 3 Duluth congregations, the Duluth Superior Friends Meeting, the First Unitarian Universalist Church, that's us, and Sacred Heart Catholic Parish have been identified as a safe havens for Central American refugees. And there's a letter here from Julie Morgan that immediately precedes that. Well, letter from Julie's in June. The story in the Duluth News Tribune was in December, but there was a movement internally to protest our country's involvement in Central America, and in keeping with the UU Service Committee's stand on this issue, this resolution was passed at a specifically called congregational meeting, basically saying that we are going to join in partnership with these other congregations to provide sanctuary. So anyway, I found exactly what I was looking for and more. This is the tip of the iceberg, and it was a great day at the archive with Marty.
Thank you. I just wanted to share some of the highlights of what is in the archive. And that would be led in my mind by my looking and Meredith taking this photo of a visitors register of visitors to First Unitarian Church between 1929 and 1958. Who knows what names are inside of it? We were afraid to open it because, as you can see, it isn't in very good condition, but these kinds of documents can always be important in our history. Something that we can open and see and read is the first 100 years about First Unitarian Church, written by Dr. Robert Owens, who was a member here for many, many years, along with his wife, Mary Jane. And he wrote this. Dr. Owens was a professor of English at UMD, and he took it upon himself to write this. I think it's a beautifully documented. It's not judgmental. It just seeks to tell our story. And I have read every word. It's through 1986 and was published in maybe the second year of Reverend Karen Gustafson's tenure here. Important in that history is the 3 paragraphs about our relationship through a minister of this church, Tom Smith, to Matthew Carter, who was the fellow, African-American fellow who, with his family here in 1963, endeavored to buy a home in Duluth and was denied that opportunity. And then Reverend Smith of this congregation actually purchased the home and sold it then to the Carter family. And this is an important part of our background. One thing that I learned in reading Dr. Owens' history was they didn't know each other. Our minister and Matthew Carter didn't know each other, but our minister was an important figure among many others in this community in striving for racial justice, racial equality at that point. And so these 3 or 4 paragraphs in Dr. Owens' history have led us to be able to put together a 2-page account of this several times over the years. And I also know that the archive contains this clipping when Matthew Carter passed away a couple of years ago. The Carters thus had to find a straw buyer who could surreptitiously make the deal on their behalf. The Reverend Thomas L. Smith, a white minister for the local Unitarian Universalist congregation and a fierce supporter of racial equality, agreed to do so. He purchased the land with the Carters' money and turned it over to them, much to the chagrin, etc. So this was upon the death of Matthew Carter in 2024, just over a year ago. I also know, and I didn't know this before my last discussion with Amy Brown at the archive, in 2022, the Minnesota State Historical Society published a book by Chad Montree, and the title is Whiteness in Plain View, a history of racial exclusion in Minnesota. And there is a chapter in that book, I have not read it, devoted to this particular event. And Amy further told me that the writer used materials in our archive to substantiate this story when he was working on the manuscript. Here's a completely different highlight, but one that's fun to share. In 2012, probably, we put together this display that ran across the whole narthex to celebrate 125 years of our congregation. And we photocopied every single page of the membership book. And then we interspersed that with photos of each of the buildings that we have lived in for 125 years. And that was the result of an enormous project to be able to end up with this page, which does list the beginning and ending date of each of our residences and notes, oh gee, where the first Unitarian preaching was here on April 3rd, 1887, for example. On History Sunday, we had a game on a table that asked people who stopped by if they could put together these photos of all of our locations in order. And then they would be supplied with the chart to check their work. Well, you can see that 1802 East First Street is in the middle of the bottom row. The others are, except for the picture of this building, the others are all before 1911, I think. And that was a fun project, could not possibly have been accomplished without the professionals in the archive. Max David worked a couple of days on digging out the photos and material from our archive, but others. At one point, one of these buildings we shared with the Pilgrim congregation before they had a church. I don't know anything about it, but anyway, that was a fun project made possible because of the UMD archive and some good history keeping that we have done. The 25-page guide to the archive, believe it or not, lists every sermon by a minister of this congregation that has been submitted. So not everything is covered, but you can see on these 2 pages, for example, 1938 to 1940, the sermons of one of our people. Look, 5th from the bottom on the left page. Sermons by Reverend Kirby S. Miller, 1906 to 1908, is in box 2, folder 14 in the archive. Reverend Ben Borton, and I know that Giger, you are a friend of his, submitted many of his sermons. It's even fun to read the titles of them, but they are all in the archive.
Could you read some of the titles, Marty? They're fun,
Sure.
but they're small.
Reverend Ben Borton, Halloween and the Shroud of Turin, 1982. The same year, The Pursuit of Happiness, or The Ethics of Informing, or 95 Years and Counting. Now that's 1982, so that's the 95th anniversary of this congregation. Dr. Freud, 1982. And then from manger to food shelf, probably about this time of year. And who might he have been preaching about in a sermon entitled The Scientist, the Poet, and the Mystic? Not certain. It's up for discussion. But at any rate, these are some things that are held there and are really so much a part of our history. There are other highlights of the archive, published materials. We have copies of our newsletters, the printed ones in the archive. Orders of service from, especially for special services, are in the archive. And then when we have a capital campaign, we publish materials in order to support those kind of things. Then we have tried to submit those items to the archive. Okay. This is when we visited. Meredith is a wonderful photographer. The future of the archive, of course, depends on what we donate to it and our ability as scholars to dig out the past and get help in making decisions for the future. Our goal is just to make everyone aware of this wonderful resource. As you can see by Meredith's story of finding out about our work in Sanctuary. We have in the past worked on a project basis. That is, one day Marree called and said, you know, there's all these boxes of these photos, color photos, Polaroid photos, black and white photos. What are we going to do? And so Destri came over and I was here and Marree was here and maybe the late Joyce Kuntz was here, and we sorted through photos, decided if we knew anybody in them, mailed some off, and put the rest in the narthex on a table, and people could relive the past if they wanted to pick up their old photos. We have worked like this on a project basis, looking at materials in our boxes of saved materials and deciding if they're appropriate for the archive. Go ahead.
Yeah.
She's got the last two bullets.
Yeah, so it's sort of archives in motion. We just wanted to pitch a couple of ideas. There are endless things that we could do with the information in the archive. And you could say, and it has been said, that history is made by those who show up. And history is told by those who go where it is saved. I don't know. But one of the ideas that Giger actually pitched when we were first talking about what is in there is there were so many materials from the strategic plan back in 2000 called Vision 2000. And so looking at all those different components and saying, gosh, what have we accomplished? What didn't we accomplish? Is it important to accomplish the things we didn't accomplish, or do we have new goals now? So taking some of those holistic looks. Or the fourth bullet, which is a more ambitious project. So we have a history that goes through 1986. We saw the front page earlier, and it's also, I posted it in the chat. If you have joined online since then, you won't be able to see it, but I'll try to repost it. And we can just make it available. We could like do an article in the Connect or something where you can go and download that history if you want. But if you're an aspiring historian or documentarian, or just want to tell a few stories and bring them to the forum, You could do UUCD history from 1986 to present. There are a lot of different ways we can tell our story. Mr. Owens, Professor Owens, did one of those, and it's ripe with opportunity. So those are just a couple of ideas. It looks like Marty has her hard copy of that history here, if you want to check it out. And yeah, so are we wrapping now? We're going to take some questions?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I,
Mark, I'm gonna come around with the mic, and I'm gonna escape out of here so that I can also post that link, repost it.
I have a chance to respond to the first question that everyone wants to ask. And it's not, and I don't have a brilliant response, but why isn't everything that we publish, everything that we do, why don't we just send a digital file over to the archive and say, this is yours? And I asked that question. And the answer to that is it takes a long time to take digital materials and place them so that they can be accessed when they are needed. So it's not the difficulty of sending a file, it's the challenges of accessing them when somebody wants to see them and where they're stored and everything. So, Sally?
Yeah, I just wanted to make mention of one other archive that Amy Brown helped with. Jim put in an archive of the sanctuary movement, and you might find more information about what she did there. Yeah, so.
Great,
Information. Yeah.
great. All right. Sir?
So these files accessible digitally?
No, except for the ones like our membership book that we have created a file for.
And then how difficult is it to access the files that do exist there?
You need to make an appointment and ask for what you want to look at and go over to the archive in order to study them.
I know that when I've tried files, it was easier getting files from University than it was university.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, the physical archives are sort of their own beast. It's we've got the electronic files for some of the things, but it's kind of going there and interacting with the physical documents and artifacts.
Thanks, Marty, for doing all this. I have a question and a comment. Is there a fee? Does UUCD pay a fee to UMD for this?
No,
Okay, great. For our taxes, one good use of our taxes. Good. This is like finding your roots to me. What they're doing in the background of finding your roots on TV. Anyway. And my comment is when you said you're really hopeful and people are interested and maybe it's the boomers about history, this is really hopeful to me because I thought the interest was to change history and to get in there and not look into what really happened. So this is very hopeful to me. Yeah. Your attitude.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Seltzer, I don't have a question, but we can't see you or anybody.
Okay, just a second. I'm sorry, Giger. Kathy was trying to ask a question.
No, I was just saying that we couldn't, I was asking you to get on camera. Thank you. That's better.
Okay, I'm sorry, Giger, go ahead.
So there has been an enormous journey since the 1980s And I really, really appreciate work that Marty and you and others unnamed, and now Meredith is the young kid on the block. But there's a wonderful opportunity here to deal with that document, Space and Spirit for another 100 years, and evaluate that. Our current leadership, in my judgment, bring that to the table, and it's a high time, a timely, beneficial time for the current congregation, many of whom were not present at that, to learn the mechanics, the documents that exist, and all of that. It's a wonderful opportunity in the here and now. Yeah. And so I feel pretty strong that I'm part of that door of doing it. I wanted to ask about the work that Marty Weintraub did during the early fundraising video. Where are those documents? Do you know?
I think that specific video that he made is likely in the archive. We have another one that Brian Barber put together for us based on photos that is really fun to look at. Yes, yeah, it was.
Both of those fellows are outstanding elements in our history, really doing good work for the congregation.
Okay.
Does the university have to accept everything we give them, or how do they determine what they accept and don't accept? And
That's a really
how
good
is it
question.
here that determines, I can't, that who determines what preserve? I mean, do we preserve every sermon that's given here?
When the sermons that are made available to the archive, I mean, it would have to be, I think the person giving the sermon says, yes, place this in the archive. We did deal with one issue some years ago when we found that the collection that was here that hadn't been forwarded to the archive included our members in the news, but in areas that had nothing to do with our congregation and our building or anything. I mean, many of our people are very visible in other parts of the community, but our archive is to highlight the work of this congregation by its members and others. So that was the only thing that we dealt with. I don't want to put you on the spot, Bill, but do you know? Because Bill was involved, of course, as a director of the library at UMD. How does an archivist decide what goes in there?
Well, there's always the question of space. And, if something is duplicates something that you already have, or, you want it to be something that has unique significance to the collector. And it has to be germane, like you were just mentioning, that if somebody did something by mistake, well, it's a very good thing, but it doesn't necessarily pertain to this thing. So it has to be, directly involve this institution and actually, add something. It doesn't, if somebody did just rehistory here, well, maybe it's not necessarily to keep, but we want it to be something to add to the collection.
Okay, maybe it's incumbent on us to start here, making good decisions about what should be added to our 6 feet 6 inches of archive, which is, okay, our congregation leads, other than the Catholics, in having the most materials in the archive. No Lutheran congregation has more materials in their archive.
Marty, I wondered if you, I don't think this has already been covered, but could you say a little bit about CHUM? And
One thing I learned a lot about just in the last year and a half about the trends in submitting things to the archive, because CHUM did not have any presence in the UMD archive. There was not one single box. And so when I first went on the board, I spent 3 days down in the basement of an awful building downtown where their materials had been stored. And one thing that was interesting about that process is there are a lot of published materials about what a business or organization has to save for 1 year, 7 years, forever. And that was a good piece of learning. And we threw out all kinds of stuff, and some of it had to be shredded, but we kept materials that we thought would start a really good archive for CHUM. And we delivered those to the UMD archive within the last 6 or 8 months. Now it takes 1 to 5 years for a new archive where there's volumes of material to be donated, to be on the shelves and ready for retrieval. It's not a fast thing. You can't just take your notebook over, your scrapbook over on Tuesday and go access it on Friday. But it's well worth it.
Are they getting, I mean, is it lack of staff, or are they vetting the material that's coming in so that you're not just putting in lies?
I think it's the time that it takes. It's, they have 2 or 3 professionals and interns, and there's,
seems like they're cataloging it, right? So people can find what they need in there.
yeah.
I'm wondering, right now, are all sermons, like maybe wants them sent over? Is that happening? And then do they get all the newsletters automatically now, or how does the
No,
process
it
work?
is still, with regard to the sermons, we would still need to ask our minister, would you like this? Can we send this to the archive? And then we would do so. And with regard to newsletters and those kind of things, we are gathering them. But the last time Marree did that herself, she saved everyone, and every year or so made a trip to the archive and turned them in. So the last 2 years are not there yet. It's a project.
This whole issue of saving things, does everybody else have the same problem that I have?
Yeah.
I mean, my whole den is full of things that I keep shoveling back and forth, I'm like, keep this, I don't keep that. I mean, I couldn't do it for the church, I can't do it for myself.
Kathy Helser has sent a question. This is not a question, but she says, I just wonder if we had a congregational vote today regarding providing sanctuary if it would pass.
Very interesting.
Something to think about this afternoon.
Yeah.
Any questions? Thank you, Kathy Helzer. My question that I keep broadcasting, who are we? Who are we at UUCD at the end of the first quarter, 21st century? Well along in that space and spirit vision that was so pretty well defined and certainly deeply processed with small group conversations, lots and lots of small group conversations. And now we're digitized, we have big platforms, and who are we, I say? And who are the keepers of the archive? It takes such a diverse mix of skills and interest for the congregation to really fly.
Okay.
One thing I do wonder about is, you know, as we're brainstorming here, whether there could be an opportunity to have a UUCD intern maybe working alongside the archive committee. It seems like the endowment fund has, I guess we just explored opportunities to pay young people to get involved with various aspects of our work. And I throw it out there just because I do think in the back of my mind, one reason the archives were so compelling to me is because my son, at that time, 17-year-old, was very interested in archives. I think it's making this sort of Gen Z, Gen Alpha comeback too. For him, it was the horror genre with an archive, a spooky archive of, you know, very sort of haunted things that he listened to, kind of a weekly podcast that featured that. And so he's like, the archive, you know? So there could, I mean, I just wonder if there's some kind of opportunity like that. I think we're supposed to be wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Could we, are there any more questions? This has just been a great discussion. I guess I'll just invite folks, as I always do, to come and talk to Marty one-on-one, and maybe we continue this conversation over time. I feel like no conversation is truly ever over. What I might do, let's see. Kathy Helzer, I absolutely love being reminded of our history, especially related to social justice initiatives in our community. This is,
That's
yeah,
what I read.
yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody online. One thing I will promote is that we'll take a couple weeks off and we'll be back the first Sunday in January with One Roof Housing. They're our woven basket recipient, the first one of 2026. So have a great break, everyone. See you soon.
I just hope everyone appreciates the fact that I did not tell 8 minutes of finding out how the women in early 20th century made aprons and sold them for 60 cents a piece in order to raise funds for the church, and it's all in here.
That's a teaser for you. Thank you, Marty.